So, welcome, my fellow rebel patriots. How is everybody doing? I hope everybody has had a good weekend. I wanted to go over some of the inflation data, some new economic data, some other current events that are taking place in the administration and in government, and kind of catch everybody up to date on what's going on. I thank you for taking the time to hang out with me. Don't forget to follow me at x.com/brewmedia, right? And also don't forget to hit the little subscribe button and also like the video. The more we get out this information, the more we can educate people, and it'll change the algorithm to put this broadcast in front of more people. Again, it's about liberty, individual prosperity, and just basically educating ourselves so, we could be prepared for what's coming down in the future regarding the economy. So we got some new inflation news, and we got the personal spending and income numbers for August. Now, these numbers were absolutely horrific. And mind you, personal income was up 0.4%. So you're saying, well, how is that a bad thing? The problem is that also personal spending was up 0.6%. So again, whatever little moderate gain you've got in your wage, inflation is destroying it faster than the rate that you are getting it, any sort of increase. The PCE, now this is the best that the Fed's favorite index was up another 0.3%, which was worse than the prior month, which was 0.2%. So basically the PCE is telling us, hey, inflation is actually getting hotter. It's not getting colder. And it is completely unsustainable, completely ridiculous. No matter how many times the president can tell us at the Charlie Kirk rally, funeral, that inflation is down, or how many times the Fed can tell us how much they have inflation under control, the fact of the matter is that the numbers, even their numbers that they're giving, which again, I've made the argument many times, it's like having the mafia giving you the crime statistics. So even with them cheating, they cannot hide these bad inflation numbers. Year over year, the inflation is up 2.7%. Last month, it was up 2.6%. So again, more indications that the inflation is getting hotter, not colder, despite what everybody is telling you in the media and the administration and, of course, the Fed. Again, these numbers are telling us that the Fed should be raising rates, not lowering them, right? And the reason why you want rates to go up, first off, it is to prevent people from borrowing money that they shouldn't be borrowing. That's first, which would also artificially bid up prices. But also, you want to encourage savings, right? Wouldn't it be nice if you parked your money in the bank and you actually got some savings? But instead, what's happening is the inflation is actually destroying your savings, even if you have it in a money market account at 4 to 6%. They are still destroying your savings much faster than what they're giving you. So they are destroying your personal wealth. They are also destroying your economic freedom. And we have to understand, why is it that the government allows for 2% inflation? Or in this case, now we're knocking on the door to 3% inflation, nearly 50% more than their target. Why do they do that? Because inflation helps pay for government, right? So because the politicians don't have the courage to go to the American people and say, hey, look, we need to raise rates. We need to raise taxes, right? We need to pay for government. We need to cut government spending, right? The politician doesn't want to do that, right? What they want to do is keep the party going, right? And how they do that is by paying for government through inflation. And Another sign that inflation is out of control is look at the precious metals market. I mean, now on Friday, check this out. On Friday, gold closed last week at $3,660 per ounce. Now, if anybody's been listening to me, watching me, I have been telling people back before gold was even at $300 an ounce, they need to go and buy some gold, right? They need to protect their assets because I understood what the government was going to do. I understood that the Fed was going to create tons of inflation, right, over the past few years, which is exactly what they've done. And there's no bigger sign than looking at gold, because gold is money, right? The green things, the green pieces of paper that you put in your pockets, that is not money. By definition, that is not money. Money is gold, right? Anybody can look that up. What you have in your pocket is fiat currency. And because your fiat currency is not backed by anything, right? That means that they could just create inflation out of thin air, which then lowers your purchasing power, which then destroys your savings, right? And the number one measure to really measure inflation, in my opinion, and to measure how much they are destroying the dollar, you have to look at gold. So anyway, last week, gold closed at $3,660 per ounce. Right now, I just checked it, we are at $3,820. We are up, now check out these numbers. Gold is up 2.2% on the week. It is also up 9% on the month. So far this year, and mind you, we still have 2 or 3 months left, we are up 48% on the year. That is if you just held physical gold, right? Your CDs don't get that. Your stocks aren't getting that. Even the Mag 7 is not getting it. Bitcoin is not getting 48%, okay? So this is what's happening. And mind you, I am like the only person out there who has been trying to get people to protect their savings, okay? And have been advising people to go out and buy some gold and also buy some gold mining stocks as well. Silver, let's talk about silver because that's another measure of inflation. Silver closed above $46 per ounce for the first time in history, okay? We are up 8% on the week, 17% on the month, and 59% so far this year. Now, again, I understand a lot of people cannot afford to buy real gold, right? They don't have $3,820 sitting in a back pocket. The very next best thing that you can do to protect your wealth and your assets, you got to buy some silver, right? And at $46 per ounce, I believe you're getting in very cheap. Silver has nowhere to go but up. There was a time about 3 or 4 months ago when I was talking about buying silver because silver, there was a time about 4 or 5 months ago when it could take 100, you could buy 100 ounces of silver for 1 ounce of gold, right? The window of that has closed up, probably about, doing the rough math, now you could probably buy 90 ounces of silver for 1 ounce of gold. So it's closed that window by about 10%. Again, you want to own both, but if you could only afford silver, don't worry because I believe silver has a very long way to go, as far as protecting your assets from getting destroyed from inflation. Another precious metals play that again, you will not find this on CNBC, Bloomberg TV, Fox Business, right? None of the legacy medias, even in the podcast world, nobody is talking about platinum, right? So I was talking about platinum about 6-7 months ago when it was $800 an ounce. Today, platinum just closed above $1,600 per ounce, right? And I was saying this, when it was $800, what an incredible deal that this was. And that you gotta buy some platinum. I thought that, and guess what? If you bought platinum when I told you to, today you've doubled your asset, right? It's now $1,600 an ounce. It is up just in the past week, 12% on the week. It is up 19% on the month. And check this out. Just so far this year, right? We're not even talking a full 12 months. We're talking, maybe 9 months, okay? We are up 74% on the year. 74%, okay? If you had listened to me, platinum is crushing the Mag 7, crushing Bitcoin. I mean, it is almost, it has beaten gold. It has beaten silver. That was the play I was really pushing people to buy. And I understand. Look, people are scared. They're like, hey, this guy Bobby Bones, does he really know what he's talking about? I mean, I look at his YouTube. He doesn't have a lot of subscribers. Not a lot of people are watching him. And that's true. And that's because of the algorithms, right? I'm just getting started. I don't buy ads. I'm organically trying to grow, right? I get all sorts of offers from like these YouTube guys who like, if I invest thousands of dollars, they're going to help me like boost my channel. I'm not looking for that, right? I want to grow my channel organically based on my knowledge and what I understand in economics and in government, right? And I believe that when people actually see my stuff coming into fruition, they will tell their friends, they will tell their family, hey, you got to subscribe to this guy. He knows what he's talking about. He was the only guy out there talking about this stuff. And again, I'm not like bragging or I'm not one of those kind of people, right? I'm a pretty humble kind of guy. But you have to give credit where credit is due, right? And so if you could, again, if you're watching this and you're not subscribed, you got to subscribe, right? You got to at least give give me a chance, right? Hit the like button, comment. Again, we have to change the algorithms so we can educate other people so they can protect themselves, right? Because what my fear is that there's a lot of seniors, a lot of young people, right? They're going to get clipped, right, in this economy, right? When we have a tech meltdown, because we're going to have an AI meltdown, I truly believe it. And you see the stock market melting down because basically there are 7 or 8 companies in the stock market that are literally holding the whole stock market up. Once the bubble is revealed and gets pricked, it's game over, right? And by then it's going to be too late, right? So you don't want to buy gold, silver, platinum, even the gold mining stocks, the silver mining stocks, when everybody else is running in there, right? You want to be early to the game, right? You want to be there before other people start talking about it because that's when you get your biggest gains, right? Or when you're the first one at the party, right? You want to be the first one at the party, right? And so you get the best seat, right? You get the best place in there. Just understand that this is not normal for the precious metals market. This would not be happening if inflation was not on the rise. And now, remember what I just said about you want to be the first one at the party? Well, let me tell you something. Now, for the first time in history, Morgan Stanley, and again, Morgan Stanley has come out and they've changed their portfolio advice. And originally, their portfolio advice used to be 60% stocks, 40% bonds. Okay? Now they just came out and changed their advice for their clients. Now, listen to this. It used to be 60 stocks, 40 bonds. Now it's 60% stocks, 20% bonds, and now 20% gold. Now, mind you, now it is no longer Bobby Bones giving you gold advice. Now you have Morgan Stanley, right? Going out there and telling their customers, hey, you need to protect yourself, right? They see inflation on the rise and they understand, right, that even with the nominal gains in the stock market. And a matter of fact, I did the math. Looking back just in this past year, okay, precious metals, gold has outperformed the stock market. Even though the stock market has hit new highs, gold has outperformed the stock market by over 20%. Okay? And if you go back to 2022, okay, we have outperformed the stock market by 30%. Bitcoin, right? Let's talk about Bitcoin. We have outperformed Bitcoin by 15% this year so far. That is with the crypto president, right? All the hype about getting a crypto reserve and all this nonsense, right? You have Super Bowl ads and, all these pumpers going on CNBC. I mean, CNBC is 24 hours Bitcoin, right? If they talk about, let's say, they're talking about Ford, right? They're talking about Ford stocks. Oh, do you have any Bitcoin, LX the guy? Right? It's not even part of the conversation. Why do they do that? Because they have to keep propping up this completely digital false gold. What do they call it? I call it digital fool's gold, right? They have to keep propping this up at any chance they can, right? Because they understand that at any moment the crypto bubble can get popped as well, which I believe when the AI bubble pops, you're going to see the crypto bubble pop, because a lot of people who are invested in AI are also invested in the crypto bubble, and they're going to have to sell their crypto to make up for the losses in the AI. That's the play I see that's going to happen. Yes, you're going to get auto repos, you're going to get some house foreclosures, but I think the massive carnage is not just going to be in the AI play, but it's also going to be in the crypto space. But what it is Morgan Stanley understands that the Fed and the government will never hit their 2% target anytime soon. And think about what I'm telling you. Since COVID, the Federal Reserve and the government has destroyed an average of, even using their numbers, right? If we're just going to use their numbers, roughly 30% purchasing power, okay? Now, they still want to destroy another 2% annually, right? Does that make any sense to you, right? So, so no matter, even if they hit their 2% target, you are guaranteed to lose more purchasing power holding dollars, right? Buying their bonds, right? Buying their financial assets, right? In paper denominated currencies. And so what Morgan Stanley is doing for the first time, and now we're going to start to see other major firms doing it, telling their clients to buy gold. Now, mind you, where are all of Morgan Stanley's clients going to be able to buy gold? Like how are they going to, look, if you had a 60-40 split, right? You had 60% stocks and 40% bonds, and now they're saying, hey, we want you to split the bonds, right? What is Morgan Stanley really saying? What they're saying is sell bonds, right? They're not saying sell the stock. They're saying sell the bonds, because what they're saying is that the U.S. paper is trash, right? So now, not only is the federal government borrowing so much money, right, creating all this paper, right, out of thin air with, the Federal Reserve, now you're going to have Morgan Stanley clients selling bonds into a market that nobody wants. Who's going to buy all those bonds, right? This is complete disaster for the dollar, right? Okay, so check this out. So I like sometimes putting this sort of, like when I'm trying to teach people things, I like to put it into perspectives that people can really understand, so they understand when they're trying to explain it to other people exactly what I'm trying to say regarding inflation, gold, and the stock market. So I want to put this into a perspective so that when you're trying to explain to your relatives, hey, why do you got to watch this guy? Hey, Why are you explaining to subscribe to this guy? Or if you're trying to explain to your brothers, your sisters, your friends why they should be protecting themselves with gold and silver, let me explain to you the history a little bit of how gold has outperformed the Dow. So at its peak in 1929, the Dow Jones was 381.17. Okay? Today, the Dow is 46,250. To put that into perspective, in 1929, gold was $20 per ounce. Okay? Today, gold is over $3,800 per ounce. That means in 1929, the Dow was worth 19 ounces of gold. So think about this. In 1929, the Dow was worth 19 ounces of gold. Today, the Dow is only worth 12 ounces of gold. That is a 37% decline over the past 96 years. Again, don't be fooled by inflation. Gold is telling you that a lot of your nominal gains in the Dow is really just inflation, okay? And so you have 96 years. Now think about all of the bailouts, all of the trillions of dollars that the federal government has done to prop up the economy, bailing out zombie companies, bailing out airlines, bailing out banks, bailing out auto industries. And yet, gold, just sitting there, right, has outperformed the Dow by 37% over the past 96 years. Okay? Now, let's look at a couple of stocks. I'm just going to go through a couple of them. But, so check this out. So the GDX, okay, mining stock, record high, up 120% this year. Okay? Now, it's 18% this month, beating the S&P's all-year high. That one stock has outperformed, the entire stock market, okay? Now, let's look at the GDXJ. The GDXJ is up 20% this month. That's another gold mining stock, okay? And it's up 125% so far this year. And again, the things that I invest in is like real assets, real companies that have real earnings. These are the best performing stocks this year, beating the tech stocks that nobody was talking about. I was literally the only guy out there that was given this sort of information. The tech stocks, unlike the value mining stocks, are losing money. So, like when you look at NVIDIA, ChatGPT, all of these big tech stocks, they are all bleeding money. And a lot of their money is just from being bid up in the stock market, right? It's a lot of gambling going on. There's a lot of borrowing money going on. And when you buy a mining stock, and mind you, it is much cheaper to buy mining stocks than it is the physical gold, right? But you're not just buying the company, you're also buying the metal that's in the ground, right? That hasn't been dug up yet. So, that is something to keep in mind when buying mining stocks. And I own silver mining stocks. I own all sorts of precious metal stocks. I also own energy stocks. Because again, I want to hedge against inflation. I want my money to be in real assets, right? Not overinflated assets, not people who are putting out memes and all of this nonsense to boost up their valuations based on nothing, right? My investments are based on actual earnings and actually what they're producing. Okay, so also I wanted to go over, talking about the tech bubble and all this nonsense that's going on, because it reminded me of Cisco back in the 80s, when Cisco was, what they would do is, now check this out, they would loan other internet companies, they would loan them money, and then they would take that loaned money and buy their own product, right? And not buy their own product, but buy Cisco product. And So what would happen is it would make Cisco and other dot-com companies look much bigger than what they were. Well, right now, we have NVIDIA. Now, check this out. NVIDIA is buying $100 billion worth of ChatGPT stock. Okay? Now, ChatGPT is turning around to buy NVIDIA products. So, look at this. NVIDIA is literally buying, that's another way for NVIDIA to buy its own product, right? Just like Cisco did back before the dot-com bubble. And then when the dot-com bubble blew up, right? It was mass carnage all over the place. That was the biggest economic downturn. And then the next one was the '08 financial crisis, which most people watching this remembers. Most people don't remember the dot-com bubble because the great financial crisis in '08 dwarfed that one. But I believe this next crisis coming up is going to dwarf all of them. So think about it. So NVIDIA is basically buying this stock to prop up ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT is going to take that money to go buy NVIDIA products, right? That it probably doesn't even need. But again, this is all hype, and this is to confuse investors. This is to bulk up the stock price, right? And again, this is what you see in bubbles. And this is why you need to be very careful where you park your money, right? Because there's a lot of this stuff going on right now in the tech AI world. Also, more dangerous financial news came out, which is going to be terrible for the dollar, in my opinion, because the guy who Trump picked to sit on the board at the Fed, right, for the FMOC, came out and said that the Fed doesn't have a mandate for a strong dollar. So think about what I just said. The guy who Trump picked came out very clearly in an interview and said the Fed doesn't have a mandate for a strong dollar. How can he say that, right? Now think about this, right? If the Fed doesn't have a strong dollar policy, then why would you buy its debt? Why would you buy its bonds, right? Why would you buy its treasuries, right? It makes no sense to hold dollars, right? Now you have people actively on the Fed cheerleading to devalue the dollar, right? That's what you have, okay? Now, how does this hurt us in trade, right? Because, again, over the weekend, we just had Trump say that he's going to put tariffs on kitchen cabinets. And he called it a national threat. This is completely ridiculous. Now, mind you, he's already got tariffs all around the world, averaging 30-40%, right? And it's crazy because, like, I just bought cabinets, right? So I guess I got them before this thing happened. I bought them 2 months ago, and I'm still waiting for these kitchen cabinets to come, right? Because I'm building a little in-law suite downstairs in my house because now my aunt and mother are getting elderly, and when one of them pass, the other one's probably going to live with me, right? That's probably what's going to happen. So I want to be prepared, right, in the event that if they have to move in with me, that they have a little suite for themselves, or, God forbid, if my son wants to move back, something happens, he loses his job, gets sick, whatever, right, he'll have a little place to stay, right? So I'm preparing for the future because I can see already in my little bones crystal ball what I think is going to happen. So I bought kitchen cabinets, right? Now, as a lot of people know who follow my channel, I've been in real estate for years, right? Flipping houses, doing construction, all of this sort of thing. And, these kitchen cabinets, here's the thing, I can already tell you, they're probably 5% less quality than the ones before that I bought, but yet I'm paying about 35% more, okay, for the same type of cabinetry. Okay, so what's happening is we're getting less quality cabinets, right? But paying 35-40% more, right? For the cabinets, right? So it's probably a 50% less value to me as the client, as the customer, right? Now, why am I bringing this up? Because now Trump wants to put more tariffs on just kitchen cabinets. I don't know why. Probably there's a manufacturer here. Here's what happens. There's probably a major manufacturer in America that went to the White House, lobbied the president, said, hey, can you, maybe I'll buy some Trump coin. Maybe I'll invest in your son's, what does he have? He has the executive club in D.C. We need help. And so what they do is they go to the White House, they lobby the president to put tariffs or to exempt them from tariffs. Well, in this case, they asked for tariffs. And so now the president comes out. It's a national security, he called it, which is completely ridiculous, right? There's no national security on kitchen cabinets, right? But he did it anyway. And so what I think is going to happen, right, because people are pretty smart, I have a prediction. I bet you what'll happen is the industries are going to get smart, and what they'll do is they'll just name kitchen cabinets, probably bathroom cabinets, or living room cabinets, or hey, check out these dining room cabinets, right? You'll get rid of the word kitchen and insert something else to avoid the tariff, right? That's probably what's going to happen. Then also, Trump also did the same thing for couches with upholstery. And he said that that's also national security. And again, I believe what's going to happen is you're going to buy the upholstery and the couch separate. This is what I think is going to happen. Because Americans already basically put their furniture together as it is, right? Look, I just, in my renovation, I just bought a couch. Right? I didn't look at where the couch came from. I looked at the price and I looked at, hey, how does it feel? I hopped on it, jumped on it. I was all over that thing, right? Because, I got to sit on the thing for hopefully the next decade if the Lord lets me stay alive for that long, right? And I want to enjoy my couch for a long time, right? And so the last thing I looked at was the tag. Nobody flips the couch to look at the tag to see where it's built. Nobody cares, right? What they want is high quality for a good price. That's what the American people want. And so Trump made it a national security issue also for furniture that has upholstery on it. Well, we already have things like Lovesac and other companies where you could sort of like IKEA, right? Americans already, are willing to put together their furniture. I would make a bet that what will happen is some furniture companies, right, for middle class people, for lower class people, right, that can't afford $7,000 to $10,000 for a couch, right? Maybe they could afford, $1,500. Maybe they could afford $2,500, right, for a couch. Those people, they're probably going to buy the couch and then buy the upholstery separate. And then they'll just zipper it up. It'll be a separate buy, right? That's probably what's going to happen. And you see that already with auto parts and other things, right? Where a company will ship to one country that might be exempt on something, and then they ship it into the country, right? There are ways to try and get around this stuff. But again, every time the president does this, the cost on the American people go up. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because when you have Trump's pick, Stephen Moran, come out there and say he doesn't care basically about having a strong dollar, that's not the Fed's policy is to protect a strong dollar, that hurts us on trade as well. Because not only do you have to pay the tariff tax, right? You also have to pay the inflation tax, right? So when you're competing for, let's say, that couch or that kitchen cabinet, right? You don't just compete with your neighbors, right? Because we have a global economy, right? You also have to compete with other countries, right? And if their currencies are stronger than ours, then what happens is, let's say the kitchen cabinets are made in, I don't know, let's say Italy, right? What Italy does is, if you're the manufacturers, you want to sell to the highest bidder, right? That's what everybody does, right? So let's say the Swiss franc, which is beating us as far as currency goes, they're kicking our ass, right? Let's say you got to compete with the Swiss franc now. And now we have a weak dollar policy, right? Well, what Italy will do is Italy will say, hey, you're going to need more dollars, okay, to, buy that kitchen cabinet or that couch, right? That's what Italy's going to do. And it's not just going to be Italy. It's going to be China. It's going to be Japan. It's going to be Korea, right? Because, again, nobody wants to hold bad paper, right? And if they get wind that, hey, wait a minute, the Federal Reserve and the government, they're not going to protect the dollar, then what's going to happen is they're going to force you to use more dollars to purchase those imports. Right now we have a government shutdown that's coming our way. And these are the two parties, all right, that are in charge. One side, you have the GOP, the Republicans, that are asking for $2 trillion more in new spending, right, worth of debt. Then you have the Democrats that are asking for $3 trillion in new spending. So it's either you take the $2 trillion or you take the $3 trillion, right? But again, where are we going to get the money, right? We can't afford this, right? This is a red light. This is a hammer hitting you over the head saying, hey, wait a minute, wake up, stupid. It is time to protect yourself. It is time that we stop listening to these people on CNBC, Fox Business, Bloomberg TV, all these podcasters who do not know what they're talking about, right? And actually look at what these people are doing and protect yourself. Whether if you look at the federal government or you look at the Fed, they are both destroying the dollar, and it is very important that we protect ourselves before we get clobbered by the big hand of government. And frankly, the government's broke, right? We don't only need a shutdown. What we need to do is a restructuring of the debt, right? We need to tell certain people, look, sorry, you're either going to not get a check or we have to, give a deduction, right? That we can no longer make these payments, right? We can no longer fund these foreign wars, right? We can no longer send out 100% of that check. Maybe we can pay 90%, right? Maybe we can pay 95%. But somebody has to take the cut, right? And so this is the problem because none of the politicians want to do this. And this is not sustainable, okay? We're not talking 2 billion or 20 billion or 200 billion, right? We're talking the conservatives are at 2 trillion and the Democrats are at 3 trillion. And this is the problem with both parties. This is why we need to vote third party, right? We need to vote libertarian, right? We need to vote for the constitutional party, right? Even if you voted for the Green Party, right? Maybe you don't want to vote. I believe everybody should vote libertarian, right? But we need to stop voting for these both parties, right? Because they are the ones responsible for destroying your purchasing power. How much more proof do you need, right? That these people do not care about your savings, right? That what they care about is protecting Wall Street, the bankers, their corporate masters, right? They're interested in protecting Ukraine, Israel. They want to protect the War Department, right? I talk about it all the time how we no longer have a treasury, right? We have a Department of Debt, right? That's what we have. And so this is just one more feather in the cap of understanding that these people are hell-bent on creating more inflation. And the reason why, when you're sitting at home, like making your budget and trying to figure this stuff out, going, why would they increase spending? Why would they do that? Because they understand that the economy is very weak, right? And so this is another stimulus plan to try and prop up zombie companies, to try and prop up the banks, to try and prop up Wall Street, right? They are not interested in your savings account. They are not interested in your family surviving, right? They are interested in themselves and their personal friends, right? And who benefits them. So this is why you need to subscribe to my channel, right? You need to go to x.com/broommedia, right? Also, if you're like floating around on the internet and you see this, go to youtube.com/@broommedia. Voting for a shutdown. I'm voting for a restructuring of the debt, right? Like I was saying, maybe, if the politicians had any balls, they would tell people who are getting a check, hey, we can't give you 100%. Maybe we give you 95%, right? Maybe we can give you 94%, right? But we can't give you 100, right? The banker's bust, right? The banker is the taxpayer, right? Somebody has to take the cut, right? And it cannot keep being the taxpayer, right? It can't keep being the employee, right? Or the business owner. At some point, the people who benefit from all this spending needs to take the cut, right? And this is the time to do it. So anyway, I appreciate everybody. I love everybody. Keep your eye out for more videos. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And again, we are the true rebel patriots. My goal is to come out with some swag and some other stuff in the near future. I'm working on some designs and stuff. So keep your eye out for that in the future. Again, I'm self-funded. I am literally my own producer. I am everything here, making this program work. And so, this is completely voluntary actions. And I appreciate the time and the energy that you put in to support this channel, however small or big it gets. So again, God bless, take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.